great irony of information. Here we are, wealthiest country in the world, yet 35 million people residing within are food insecure. Why does that happen? Now, as I was doing a bit of a research, I ran into this website that is, and this organization that is geared towards trying to feed people in America. And I read something on their web page, which sounded like a mission statement, and I wanted to read it. To achieve our vision of hunger-free America, we must address the root causes of hunger and deepen our understanding of structural and systemic inequities that disproportionately impact marginalized communities and people in need of assistance. Certainly, that is a noble goal, and I absolutely applaud this organization's attempt to be able to feed and make sure that most people in America will be free of hunger. But then the funny thing is that makes me consider is two things, and it's not really funny, it's sort of contemplatively. When we talk about America, are we talking about United States of America, or are we talking about like hemispheric America? Because I think they were talking about more like United States of America rather than the hemispheric Americas. But it would have been nice if there would be hunger-free hemispheric America. Or maybe that's too much to aspire towards, but the reason that statement or those sentences caught my eyes is because they were filled with so many very, very important terms. Root causes of hunger. You want to know the root cause of hunger? There's not enough food. If there was food, then there would be no hunger. Now, if they want to talk about why there is insufficient amount of food, then that is not the root cause of hunger. That's a root cause of failure to provide, which probably would force us to look inwards. And now, I know that sounds like I'm being very critical of that organization or their mission statement, and one can then nitpick anything, but the reason that I am somewhat of upset is a simple realization. We are the richest country in the world, and there are 35 million people residing within this country who go to bed hungry, who are food insecure, who fall under poverty lines, and who are unable to provide for themselves. And amongst those groups of people, over 10 million are children. Now, if one would be critical and say adults are responsible for their own choices, one could, of course, certainly agree or disagree with that, but the children are, in fact, innocent, and they should not, in any way, shape, or form, bear the punishment for their parents' problems. And we, as a nation, should probably mind for those of us, and all of us, who reside within this land, because that is a responsibility that we should all carry and have. And the reason that this is important to me, and the reason that it upset me, isn't necessarily because that there is large problems that nobody wants to address, because that would get anybody angry to begin with, but because of the language that is being used. Now, if we were to think about it, the very similar language is being used when we talk about the hunger. We need to do something about the hunger. Education, we need to ensure that the education becomes more equitable. Poverty, we need to make sure that people are pulled out of. Who is this we, right? And how are we talking about those concepts is of a paramount importance. Because there's this concept that I want to share with you. It's called glittering generality, which is a very, very important fallacy that unfortunately gets severely and most often used, and it also fails to be understood or recognized by a majority of people. Now, what is glittering generality, right? Well, the appeal is emotionally laden, which therefore creates a quick agreement by those who are listening to you without needing to provide any kind of support. In other words, if I were to say, I am for freedom, you will say back, I'm for freedom too. But my definition of freedom and your definition of freedom could be so drastically different, which is ironic, because if every politician is on the side of freedom and the freedom as a nation, the irony of it becomes, wait a second, if we are all for the side of freedom, how is that possible that we most amount of prisoners in our land? Or is that not the kind of freedom that we intended when we were talking about freedom? Or if we did, then did that mean that we meant freedom for some rather than all? And then the other issue is the democracy, right? I mean, Democrats even have democracy sort of written into their own name. And then, of course, Republicans talk about democracy, but not Democrats. See? Democracy is good, Democrats not so good. And then Democratic Party talks about the democracy and rule of people, but of course it's comfortable for them occasionally to call the other group or the other side undesirable and what have you, and then maybe apologize for it. No, wait, never apologize for it, because they might have misspoke. And then justice, and justice is the funniest one of them all, in my opinion, because if justice, whose justice? How do we use justice? Everybody aspires towards justice, but a simple statistical fact that if you were to spend $200,000 more on your defense, you would probably have a better chance of getting away. And certainly, we're not even talking about how money makes a determination of whether you will be in confinement or bail and so forth and so on, which is going to actively and physically deny you opportunity to defend yourself effectively, which then therefore puts us in a very, very interesting place. This notion of glittering generalities is not an abstract notion. We are instinctively familiar with it. We recognize it. But for some reason, we don't allow ourselves to confront it, because in order to confront it, that means we need to stop those who use them and use those phrases and be able to hold them accountable for everything that they say. Like, for example, when we speak about education, for decades on end, we talk about how certain groups are massively underrepresented within certain professions. And then you speak about that, and any number of reasons are brought forth, and almost every school has an aspirational attempt towards being able to fight for or improve the conditions. Yet the reality is, as of right now, those and large groups of people are still massively underrepresented within academia, higher education, and so forth and so on. When we look at poverty, interestingly enough, we see the resonation of the same groups of people and same individuals and localities tend to be poor continuously and over again. And you don't have to take my word for it. All you need to do is look it up, right? Like there's, 3,160 counties in United States, and about, I don't know, 20 or 50 of them continuously rotate within being the poorest of them all. And how do we talk about those people? Who are those people, and how are those people different than us? And maybe if we stop doing that, if maybe we stop using glittering generalities as a way of categorizing ourselves or the solutions or the problems, and actually speak about both the problems and the people with using the proper names, and not trying to dodge it in some way or another, we will find ourselves in a better place. Or maybe at the very least, we might be able to no longer say that the 10% of our population is starving, and we're okay with that because we have a mission.